Hello, this is Professor Scott Norman at Pittsburgh State University in the Automatic Transmission Lab, and we are continuing our lessons on compressor. Today we are going to be talking about clutch failure. And so sometimes the clutch fails, maybe there's an opening in the winding and you have to replace the clutch, and it's a pretty simple repair. Other times the clutch could fail in such a way where you have to replace the whole entire compressor. So when I take a look at a clutch, I'm going to use this one here as an example. You have the hub, I call that, and the front piece. And the hub is actually made out of two pieces. The piece that's in the back is what is connected to the pulley, and it's steel against steel, so that's your clutch, we'll call that, in which the clutch surface on the hub will mesh with the clutch surface on the pulley in order to engage and disengage. The other piece is the piece that's in the center that is connected to the hub. So it's actually two pieces that are put together with some type of dampener. So typically it's a rubber dampener, and so normally it's all one piece. It's together. But if the clutch gets hot, if the front of the compressor gets very hot, that rubber can melt. And if that rubber melts, it then starts making all types of bad noise. So when you start looking at compressor diagnosis, if you turn your compressor on and you hear this awful noise coming out of your hood, and you turn your compressor off and the noise stops, well, that's a pretty easy diagnosis to start doing some good visual inspections on your AC compressor to see what's going on. I do have a good story for you. I remember one time our administrative assistant came in and said that their compressor or their AC wasn't working on a hot day, and so it happened to be during AC class. So we brought her car in, and I put some students in, and I remember it was hot, so it was probably in August or September, very early in the semester, to have the students take a look at the car and do a really good visual inspection. And they're like, well, they said that the compressor was engaged and it wasn't cooling, so they're talking about a bad compressor. And so I remember going over there looking at the gauges, and the gauges weren't showing that the compressor was on. The gauges were showing both high side and low side were the same. And so I remember looking down at the compressor, which was kind of at the bottom of the engine, and this is what I saw right here. So I saw the pulley spin, and I'm looking at it, and I kind of did one of those double takes, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And when I kind of look around a little bit further, the hub is sitting kind of off to the side on a plastic cover on the bottom of the engine. And so I'm like, class, come over here and take a look at this and let me know what you see. So I had the whole entire class go over there, look at that compressor, and they're all like, just, I don't know. And so again, it was very early in the semester, and I said, is there something missing on there? And so it looked like the compressor was spinning all the time. So when you first looked at it, it looked like it was engaged. But what was a giveaway is that the hub was sitting off to the side, and so the hub just fell off. And so lucky for her, we were able to get the hub, put the hub back on. I used one of my spare compressor, took the bolt off, put the new bolt on, put a little bit of Loctite on it, and sent her on her way. So I think if she would have taken it to the shop and somebody maybe had been dishonest with her, they would have sold her a whole entire compressor and a recovery, recycle, recharge on them. So obviously, good visual inspection, we say to our students, is always one of the first steps after you have verified the complaint, is determining the symptoms. Pop the hood, look at everything, see what's going on. So the reason why I talk about this hub a little bit is because we tend to have lots of problem with this. And so let's take a look at this compressor right here. This is one that a student or faculty brought in for a problem. But as I take the hub off, if you take a look at it, it's the hub is actually in two pieces, which is wrong. And so when they turn the air compressor on, or when the AC kicked on, kicked off, you figure, there's no dampening between those two pieces, and it made a really bad noise, so it's making a terrible noise, and so that was obviously a problem. But they wanted to replace just the clutch, because just the clutch is a pretty easy thing to repair. And so I said, whoa, wait a minute. Anytime you have the dampener melted, then there's a big problem somewhere. So you have to figure out why this clutch got so hot. If I take a look at the surface area between the the hub and the pulley, heavy grooving, I can feel, heavy grooving, a brand new clutch, you don't feel hardly any grooving at all in the, on the clutch face. And so if you pull the pulley off and take a look at it, the bearings, I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but the bearings are there's a lot of bearings missing in there, so the bearings went bad. The bearing I'm sure bearing metal got between the clutch pulley and the clutch hub, caused a lot of friction, caused a lot of heat, caused the dampener to melt on the hub. Start looking at the windings of the clutch itself, the electromagnetic collector on that. That looks like it's melted. So the key is that if you try to replace all that stuff, what I'm really worried about is that the front of this compressor and that compressor seal got hot, and that compressor seal is going to start to leak. So my recommendation on this particular unit was to replace the whole entire compressor, and it's a pretty good example of a failure. And so I'm going to just set this off to the side. So when you start looking at that, as far as failures, so again, I showed you this compressor before as we looked at the R4 compressor, but anytime you see the paint got hot enough to where it starts to peel, then something there got hot. So the bearing went out. The clutch surface itself started to create heat from a slippage, and so obviously when you see stuff like that, that's bad. You need to do a whole entire compressor replacement. If I take a look at this compressor over here, this is another one in which I haven't taken this one apart because it's a pretty good example. But the same thing is that the hub, the piece that's connected to the input shaft, is right there in the center, and it still rotates, but the dampener between the pulley, the actual clutch material and the piece that goes to the hub, again, these two pieces right here, those two pieces right there, all the dampener, some type of rubber, got hot enough to where it melted, and so so this thing was still trying to engage and disengage when we got it, but of course it was making a terrible noise, and so the pulley feels really rough, so it feels like that was a bearing failure, and so that's what caused this to do this, is the bearing failure. So again, recommended to the student, go ahead and replace the whole entire compressor at this point in time. And it's it's a good example for us to show students who doesn't have a lot of experience. A technician who's been working in the AC field for 30 years, they got dozens and dozens of these examples. This is another example of the hub coming apart. So it's actually physically broke in two pieces. So when you see something like this, probably the compressor got locked up. So if I take the hub and try to spin it, it doesn't move at all. So the compressor seized, and the belt, typically when we have these new style belts, they have a lot of torque, and they'll just take that whole entire hub and rip it in two. So when I start looking at these type of failures, when I take this compressor off, I'm going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to try to drain it into a pan and see how much oil is in the pan, because typically if the compressor is locking up like this, most of the time will contribute to that, to lack of lubrication. Either there's no oil in the system ran a long time with a low refrigerant charge, which then is stopping the oil from circulating through the refrigerant. So that's a locked up compressor. And this is another example of a locked up compressor, where the hub and the friction material came in split apart. And I don't know, the bearing on this. Oh yeah, I do feel if I take this pulley and move this pulley, up and down, axial movement, I feel that. So, so typically that's a bearing failure when you start feeling movement in that bearing or in that pulley. So, is this one happening? Oh yeah, look at that guy right there. The thing moves a lot. So, obvious bearing failure at that point in time. The whole entire pulley came apart on that. Let's take a look at this compressor and see what we come up with on it. So if I take it and spin it, I can hear, just by spinning it, I can hear that it's not spinning smooth. There's a problem somewhere. The hub itself seems like it turns really nice, so it's not a problem. but if I take my pulley and move it forward and backwards, oh, there's play, and there should not be ever any play on a pulley like this. And so, so the bearing went bad is what it did. And so we'll have to take the hub off of this, and we'll have to do the inspection on this, which is going to be part of the next video series. Is how to take your clutch off if there is a problem where you want to inspect it or to replace it. And there's a whole bunch of special tools that are required for that, depending upon what type of compressor you have. Something I wanted to note on this, though, is that this is a compressor that came off of one of our students' vehicles. And just by sitting here, just for a little bit, there's already oil that is dripping out of it, which is normal. I normally will put a tray under it, and I will spin the hub, and I'll try to get oil out of it, and it's dripping out. And it was dripping over on the other bench too, so probably most of it's been dripped out already. But I do see that it has a yellow tint to it, so it does have dye in it. A lot of companies are putting dye right in their compressors, brand spanking new in your AC systems. But I expect there to be oil in it. If this compressor would happen to be locked up, I take it off. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sit it on the bench in a tray with the ports, the suction port and the discharge port low, and let it just drain and see what happens. And if there's no oil coming out of it, then I know, well, that's why the compressor failed, is because it didn't have any lubrication in it. This is Scott Norman, and if you're looking for more educational videos about automotive technology, you could look at my Professor Pentane YouTube channel. And I'm also on Facebook, and I got a webpage. Just look for Professor Pentane. Thank you very much. You guys have a good day.